The year is 772. A new king, Charles, soon to be known as Charlemagne, sits on the Frankish throne. He's young, ambitious, and determined to expand his realm beyond modern France, Belgium, and parts of Germany. Charlemagne's gaze turns north to Saxony, a land of pagan tribes and fierce independence. For centuries, Franks and Saxons have clashed along their volatile border. Charlemagne decides to end this cycle. He will conquer, convert, and absorb the Saxons into his empire. This is more than a border war. It's a collision of civilizations. The Franks are Christian, centralized, and governed by law and church. The Saxons are tribal, pagan, and fiercely autonomous. In 772, Charlemagne launches his first campaign deep into Saxon territory. His target, the Irminsul, a sacred Saxon symbol believed to hold up the sky. The Franks destroy the Irminsul, looting its sanctuary, a symbolic blow to Saxon culture. Charlemagne wants to show that his god and his rule are supreme, but instead of submission, the Saxons erupt in rebellion. This act sparks a war that will last over 30 years, the longest and bloodiest of Charlemagne's reign. The Franks win early victories, extracting oaths and treasure, but Saxon promises prove hollow. As soon as the Frankish army withdraws, the Saxons retaliate, burning churches and slaughtering settlers. This sets a brutal pattern: invasion, forced submission, rebellion, and retribution. Charlemagne's campaigns grow harsher, his resolve harder. The war becomes a cycle of violence, pushing both sides to extremes. It will define Charlemagne's rule and stain his legacy with blood. The struggle for Saxony has only just begun. To understand this war, we must understand the Saxons. They weren't a unified nation, but a patchwork of tribes: Westphalians, Eastphalians, Angrians, bound by language and tradition. Power was local, centered on clans and chieftains, with no single leader for all Saxons. This made them a nightmare to conquer. Defeating one tribe meant little to the others. Their world was forests, marshes, and small villages. Hardy people, deeply tied to their land and pagan gods. Their religion, rooted in sacred groves and symbols like the Irminsul, was the core of their identity. Charlemagne's demand for conversion wasn't just religious, it was cultural erasure. Saxon society was stratified. Nobles led, freemen fought, and peasants toiled. They resisted not just for their gods, but for their freedom from foreign rule and taxes. The Frankish feudal system was alien to them. The Saxons avoided open battle, excelling instead at guerrilla warfare, raiding, ambushing, and vanishing into the wild. Their decentralized, independent nature made them resilient and elusive. For the Franks, it was a war of attrition against an enemy who refused to play by their rules. The conflict would drag on, fueled by Saxon defiance. After the Irminsul's destruction, Saxony became a land of endless rebellion and harsh Frankish reprisals. Each spring, Charlemagne's armies swept through, burning villages and forcing baptisms. Forts and garrisons were built, but peace never lasted. As soon as the Franks withdrew, rebellion flared, often led by the elusive Widukind. Widukind became the symbol of Saxon resistance, using guerrilla tactics and striking at Frankish outposts and churches. Charlemagne responded with relentless force, crushing uprisings and tightening his grip. In 776, after a major revolt, he cornered Saxon forces at Eresburg, sending a clear message: nowhere was safe. The Franks intensified occupation, building more forts and sending missionaries to convert by force. But forced oaths and baptisms bred only resentment. Outward compliance masked deep-seated anger. The cycle of rebellion and retribution escalated, pushing both sides toward a breaking point. Saxon resistance grew fiercer, Frankish punishments harsher. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shock all of Europe. The war was about to reach its darkest hour. In 782, Charlemagne believed Saxony was pacified. He was wrong. Widukind returned, rallying the Saxons for their greatest rebellion yet. The Saxons ambushed a Frankish army in the Sunti Mountains, annihilating it and killing key Frankish nobles. Charlemagne's response was swift and merciless. He marched north with overwhelming force, demanding the Saxon leaders answer for the uprising. The Saxon nobility, desperate to save themselves, blamed Widukind and handed over thousands accused of rebellion. Charlemagne now held thousands of prisoners. What followed was the infamous massacre of Verden. 4,500 Saxons executed in a single day. It was not a battle, but a calculated act of terror. Charlemagne's message was clear: defiance would be met with annihilation. The bloodshed at Verden was meant to break Saxon resistance forever. Instead, it would ignite even greater fury. the war entered its most brutal phase. The cost of conquest was now measured in rivers of blood. Why such brutality? Charlemagne's Saxon policy was driven by two forces, religion and politics. He saw himself as a divinely chosen king, waging a holy war to convert pagans and expand Christendom. The destruction of the Irminsul and forced baptisms were acts of religious zeal, but also tools of control. The Capitulatio de Partibus Saxoniae made paganism a capital crime. Refusing baptism meant death. The church became an arm of the state, enforcing loyalty and collecting taxes. But conquest was also about power and security. Saxony was a threat to the Frankish heartland. A buffer was needed against northern raiders. Subduing the Saxons meant new lands, resources, and soldiers for Charlemagne's empire. The massacre of Verden was both a political warning and a religious purge. In Charlemagne's mind, the executed were not just rebels, but apostates, traitors to both king and God. The message, defiance would be crushed, faith enforced. The war was now a crusade, bloody, uncompromising, and total. The fate of Saxony hung in the balance. The massacre of Verden was meant to end the war. Instead, it fueled Saxon resistance. For 2 years, Saxony burned with rebellion, led by Widukind and driven by desperation. The conflict became a war for survival, not just independence. Charlemagne responded with total war, scorched earth, relentless campaigns, and winter offensives. Major battles raged, but the Saxons, though defeated, always regrouped. Their fragmented society made them hard to crush, but also prevented a unified front. The Franks could win battles, but not lasting peace. By 785, Saxony was devastated. Starvation and exhaustion set in. Charlemagne offered Widukind amnesty in exchange for baptism. Widukind agreed, traveling to the Frankish court, and accepting baptism with Charlemagne as his godfather. This symbolic act marked the psychological end of the war. Open rebellion faded, though unrest simmered for years. Saxony was finally subdued, but at a terrible cost. The land and its people were forever changed. The Frankish Empire had triumphed, but peace would be uneasy. With Widukind's surrender, the war shifted from open rebellion to forced integration. Charlemagne dismantled Saxon tribal structures, dividing the land into counties ruled by loyal nobles. The old freedoms vanished, replaced by Frankish feudal obligations. Forced conversion continued, enforced by harsh laws and the spread of churches and monasteries. Bishops became both spiritual and political enforcers, stamping out paganism. Mass deportations broke the will of rebellious communities. Thousands were resettled far from their ancestral lands. Saxon identity was systematically erased. Over time, a new Saxon elite emerged, loyal to the Carolingians and educated in their ways. The sons of former rebels became hostages, then rulers, tied to the empire that conquered their fathers. The transformation was ruthless but effective. Saxony was now part of the Frankish world, its resistance crushed, its future rewritten. The scars of conquest would last for generations. The massacre of Verden stands out for its scale, but violence was the norm in Charlemagne's era. Medieval rulers were expected to be ruthless, mercy was weakness, and treason the gravest crime. Charlemagne's campaigns against Lombards, Avars, and Muslims were all marked by bloodshed. In Saxony, the stubborn resistance provoked ever harsher reprisals. Frankish law gave kings the right of life and death over rebels and apostates. The executed at Verden were seen as traitors to both king and God. The massacre was a judicial act, justified by the standards of the time. Charlemagne was not unique. Vikings, Byzantines, and others used terror as a tool. What makes Verden notable is its documentation. The Franks recorded it without shame. The royal Frankish annals presented as harsh but necessary justice. To them, it was order restored in a rebellious land. To history, it remains a chilling testament to the cost of empire. The Saxon wars were brutal, but their legacy shaped Europe. Saxony's pagan tribal society was destroyed, replaced by a Christian duchy integrated into the Carolingian Empire. The conquest united the major Germanic peoples under one ruler for the first time since Rome. This laid the foundation for the medieval German kingdom. Ironically, a century later, a Saxon dynasty would rule the empire that conquered their ancestors. The memory of the conflict endured. Widukind became a symbol of resistance. Charlemagne a figure of both unity and tyranny. The war was not a clash of nations, but of systems: centralized Christian monarchy versus decentralized pagan tribes. Empires are rarely built peacefully. They rise on conquest and cultural transformation. Charlemagne's achievement was monumental, but the cost was immense. The bloodshed at Verden and across Saxony was the price of unity. The Saxon Wars marked the violent birth of a new European order. Their echoes still shape the continent's history.